Make sure to check us out on Letterboxd for written reviews.
for films that we've done not only on the podcast, but outside of the podcast too.
Links in the description below.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rewatch podcast. My name is Samuel,
And I'm Jaden.
and this is a podcast where we rewatch classic or current films and then decide whether they deserve a rewatch from you. Got a pretty interesting episode on our hands today. I
Yep.
think there's going to be some interesting discussions to be had. But what are we going to be talking about today, Jaden?
We're going to be talking about Denis Villeneuve's. Oh God, I might have butchered that. His film Arrival from 2017, I want to say. 2016.
Yes. Going forward, obviously, he's been mentioned a few times on the channel so far, but we like to refer to him as Denny V.
Denny V.
Because that takes off the liability on our hands. We don't, we don't want to butcher his name too much.
We don't have to go to sleep knowing that we butchered his name, which I'm going to do tonight because I just butchered his name.
yeah, for sure.
Oh well.
So a story overview for this film. A linguist works with the military to communicate with alien life forms after 12 mysterious spacecraft appear around the world. Her mission is to discover why the aliens are here. Now, I want to do a bit of Oscar talk. I know we have a bit of love-hate relationship with the Oscars.
Yeah.
But I think it's only right that we mention that, this won an Oscar for sound editing, and it was nominated for like every single other Oscar. But the 2017 Oscars were quite a big year for films. We had the likes of Moonlight, La La Land, Hacksaw Ridge, Fences, Manchester by the Sea. Lots of good movies in that year. But yeah, and it was nominated for various things like Best Director. Obviously, that went to La La Land. Adapted Screenplay, Cinematography, Film Editing, Sound Mixing, Production Design. Those are all the Oscars it got nominated for. So obviously,
Adapted Screenplay. So this is a book. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It is, yeah.
It is.
I think
okay.
the book is titled something different. But yeah, I hadn't heard of the book. Obviously, I have not read the book. I didn't know the book existed. But yeah, so this has been the story's been taken from the book, put into film format, and got nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay. Didn't win, but got nominated for it.
Yep.
So I wanted to mention that because 2017 Oscars was a pretty big year.
It was a full-on year. Yeah.
Yeah, with the likes of La La Land, Moonlight, and Hacksaw Ridge. I mean, some really good movies there.
Got some good competition, yeah.
Yeah, so I think this one was, I don't know, a hard competition for the Best Picture spot. It was nominated, but didn't get there. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that. I know we, like to, trash talk
bash
the Oscars
on the Oscars.
Yeah, they are pretty useless, but in this year at least, there's some good nominations there, and I feel like Arrival deserves to be in at least in the question for this year. I feel like it would have been a bit of a snub if it wasn't. But usually before we do podcasts, Jaden, we'll sort of we'll send a message to each other. Maybe like midweek, right? So maybe we'll watch a film, we'll watch it at different times, and throughout the week, we'll end up talking for some other reason, and we'll be like, oh, how did you feel? How did you feel about this movie? And we can sort of, we sort of gauge by not giving. We don't want to give away too much. Most of our conversations are just, completely blind, but usually we have a bit of a feel for how the other person's going. Like I said, oh
Uh-huh.
man, like I don't know, Wally wasn't really doing it for me, and so
Yep,
going
yep.
into that podcast, you sort of knew,
Yep.
but you've said absolutely nothing this week, so it makes me worried.
Look, yeah, I'm still trying to keep it quiet because I legitimately want this one to be a secret, and yeah, there's only so much that I can like reveal without like actually revealing my take on the film, and I think I should just get it out with now, not the rating, but like a general
For sure,
um
go for it.
a general thoughts on what I sort of felt about this film, and you know me, like I've never really been a fan of Denny V like you have. Obviously, you've seen a lot more of his films, and I've seen a lot less. I think I've only seen two, this and Blade Runner 2049. However, what I've kind of taken from his films is that they're very slow paced, and by that I
Okay.
mean like the story and usually the runtime is very spread out across the film, and it I don't know, at times it just kind of feels like the runtime just kind of it doesn't really help the story because the story just kind of struggles to fill in the shoes of the runtime. And it's another thing that I had with 2049 is that it was just so long, and at times it felt kind of boring to me.
Okay.
Um, and that's kind of similar here with this film. And yeah, without revealing too much, I don't know. I feel like the film just kind of failed to get my interest overall. I felt like the story wasn't really there, and it was just kind of disjointed. And I did tell you before we filmed this podcast is that, or I think I remember telling you is that this is probably going to be the biggest differentiation in our ratings so far. Um, because obviously, I've seen your letterboxed review or your rating of it, and I haven't posted mine. I'm usually quite secretive with mine, um, but yeah, I'm pretty certain that this is going to be the biggest differentiation on the Rewatch podcast so far. So if anyone wants to stick around to the end, you'll see our ratings on that.
Oh, it's very interesting. It makes me excited to discuss about it because,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. There's some interesting points here. I think we're both fans of sci-fi, correct? Like we
Yeah,
both love a good sci-fi story,
definitely. Yeah.
and we watched Blade Runner 2049 together. That's one of my favorite movies. Didn't
Hmm.
really connect with you, did it? Didn't
No,
was it a
no,
bit?
and I still recognize that it's a good film though. Like it has
Mm,
technical elements that exceed in filmmaking. It's got the acting. It's obviously got the beautiful cinematography by Roger Deakins. I
yeah,
want to say, yep.
yeah, that's the one.
Um, it has everything that makes a good film. However, I was talking about The Shining with you. It's just that films that just can't bring me in and drag me into the film and make me have fun. Just I don't know. I just can't warrant a perfect review if they're not exciting in a way. Like it just struggles to get the perfect review if not everything's about it perfect. Yeah, it can be a technically speaking, it can be a perfect film, but if it wasn't fun to me, then I can't rate it a perfect film. And that's why you get films like the Simpsons movie that are just an absolutely horrendous film. They're like a 4 star for me.
Yeah, for sure. Enjoyment is always, when you review a film, if you didn't enjoy it, then it doesn't matter how good the film was.
Yeah,
You're not going to give it a good review. Like, that's just how it goes.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, um, we've watched another Denny V film together. You might have wiped it from your memory, but
Oh,
that
what?
film was called Enemy.
Oh, it was too.
You
Wow.
remember this film?
I do remember this film. Maybe I just have a hatred for Danny.
Do you want to tell the viewers what you thought of Enemy? Well, first off, hang on. I'll just say Enemy is a story. Denny Villeneuve's one of his more low budget movies. It's got
Hmm.
Jake Gyllenhaal in it, and Jake Gyllenhaal starts to see himself. He sees a doppelganger, a guy who looks exactly like him,
Hmm.
and there's big spiders everywhere, and it's very very art house, very
Yeah.
yeah, it's just it makes you think, but at the same time, what you see on the screen is not the film takes
Mm.
place in your brain when you're thinking about it and digesting the themes. But to a normal person who doesn't really want to throw themselves into it, it's a horrible movie.
Yeah, and I think that's why for any viewers that haven't seen my rating on Letterboxd, I think I gave it like an F, which is the worst review that we can give. Um, and look, I would like to think that over the past year that we've been doing the podcast and reviewing films that I've sort of gained some sort of reputation in terms of my ratings and my reviews, and that like they're not just you know posts.
Yeah.
It it just the film just didn't capture me for some reason, and it's not the fact that like it's a slow film or it's a film that you have to think about because me, I like Nolan, and Nolan does a lot of those films as well. So
Mm.
honestly, like I have no idea what it is that I don't like about Enemy. Like it just I just don't understand it, and like there's technically things that I picked out from the film that I just didn't like the color grading and some of the acting was just a bit weird, and the story just made no sense to me. It
Yeah.
I don't know. It just people. It's just Denny V makes some of the most controversial films in my opinion because you've got like people on both ends of the spectrum, reviewing this film. You've got like 5 stars from people who say it's an absolute masterpiece, and
Mm.
then obviously people on the other end like me who say it's like one of the worst films. And it's just weird how film can do that sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Now, Danny V's got a very a very unique visual style. He always likes I mean, he's the king of the wide shot. My goodness, some of his films are just breathtaking.
Hmm.
Some of the cinematography. You can always count on him to deliver at least a visually appealing film.
Mm,
In some respects, or you can always count on him to make everything look as good as it can be,
mm.
at least in my opinion. And so you can count on him for the visuals. But yeah, it feels like, well, it seems like the story aspects from some of his films are just not clicking with you.
Yeah,
And that's obviously okay.
it's just I just don't really understand them at times, and people will say, well, just because you don't understand them doesn't mean it's a bad film, and I've got arguments to back that up. But yeah, I have to agree. Some of the cinematography and images that uh, Denny V has done in his films are quite spectacular. However, I did have a few issues with Arrival. Just getting back onto the tracks of the film we're talking about today, um, which we'll get into later, and when we sort of talk about the different elements of the film. Um, yeah, it's just films like 2049 I can respect for their visuals, but films like this, and you might already know where I'm sort of talking about. Um, not really the visuals, but more so like color grading.
Oh,
um,
okay, okay.
yeah, which I don't know. It's a continual thing that I have with films is like just meh blue, greeny, sort of color grading on it, which just to me looks
Oh,
horrible.
interesting. Okay,
Um,
well, let's do
we'll
some
get more into
general
that.
thoughts then. Yeah,
Yep.
let's do general thoughts. We usually like to touch on, the visuals, the acting, and the sound before we sort of dive into spoilers.
Hmm.
Um, and but first, I want to ask you just a general question of, we tackle this every week, of would you recommend this film to someone who hasn't seen it, or what sort of person is going to like this film?
Honestly, like I have no idea what kind of audience would enjoy this film. And I feel like the majority of people would probably like this film over people who hate the film. Not more so hate, but people who didn't enjoy the film. Um, and just indicative of my rating that I'll eventually give, I'd probably not recommend a rewatch or a watch, personally because I didn't really enjoy it as much as I would have hoped. But it's hard to say with films like this because I honestly don't know who this is targeted towards, and if people like Star Wars, they might end up liking this because it's got
Mm,
similar thematic genres in it, with sci-fi and all. But I like Star Wars, and I didn't like this film as much as I would have hoped. So
yeah,
it's
interesting.
kind of weird like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Well, I'd recommend this film to to most people, but
Mhm.
obviously you also have to be you have to turn your brain on a bit for sort of the latter third of the film.
Yep.
So obviously, like film nerds, people who like to sit there and digest and think about themes and elements of films. I think they'll love this film. General audience, I think some people will really like this film and be very surprised by the sort of the subject matter that it deals with. But in terms of an aliens coming to Earth situation, I think that will sort of appeal to the sci-fi fans. So I'd say if you're a fan of sci-fi, anything related to sci-fi, give this a go. Definitely
Hmm.
gets a recommendation from me. But interesting, very interesting, man. That you know we're both fans of sci-fi and we're
Hmm.
torn on this.
Yeah.
So
And
I'm interested to find out, what works for you and what doesn't work for,
yeah,
or
it's really interesting, right? Because I feel like most of the time we have a pretty a pretty close sort of rating, and we we sort of we review a lot of the films the same. We give the same ratings. We recommend a lot of the same films, and we like a lot of the same themes in films. And when you get to a film like this, it's just kind of strange that you've
mm,
got like just sort of split down the middle, like one recommendation, one non-recommendation. And if you're listening to the podcast right now and you're thinking, oh my god, which one do I listen to? Please listen to Sam. I would, he's probably watched a lot more Denny V films than I have, and he's kind of understood his own genre more than me. um, I'm also just like the average viewer in terms of this sort of film, so I'd definitely listen to Sam if you're wanting a recommendation on this. But yeah, again, Sam recommends it. I don't recommend it.
yeah. I think you have an interesting perspective, though. Like I think your perspective is really really valuable to a lot of people who probably haven't seen the film because you probably went in with what was your sort of expectations going into the film? What did you think you were going to get?
Um, well, not to like sort of destroy you here, but when I went into the film, you obviously, I think I remember you saying it's one of Denny V's best films, and that could just be taken from you know, a, a general sort of critics and audience rating of it. Just looking it up on IMDb or something. Um, it's one of his more critically acclaimed films. However, yeah, going into this, I didn't have high expectations. I just, I thought it was going to be a pretty good film because
Mm,
of, the average rating on Letterboxd being a 4.1 or a 4.2 or something. That's
yeah.
generally quite high. Um, and Denny V's done a lot of really high regarded films. He's probably one of the, better directors of our generation and day and age right now. Um, so yeah, I would say that I had pretty high expectations. However, because I've never really resonated with Denny V as a director before, that kind of dampened, my hope for this film. Um, so yeah, I was kind of just like a middle ground, nothing too big,
Mm.
nothing too little.
Okay, okay, interesting. Um, in terms of the visuals, let's just touch on them. We'll keep it spoiler free for the moment. We'll just go visuals, acting, and sound, and then we'll jump into it.
Hmm.
But in terms of the visuals, I wrote down like it's a very grey and a very dark film,
Yeah,
and there's not a lot of color, and it sounds like that was an issue for you.
yeah, yeah. The visuals, although you've got some pretty um, scenic views of this massive alien spaceship, which look pretty cool. Yeah, the color grading and the color palette of the film is just very monotone and very bland. Like you've got a lot of
Okay.
um, sort of aquary greens and blues and grays and blacks. And I remember in some of those opening shots with what's her name,
Oh,
man,
was it with
Louise.
the dog Louise and her child?
Yeah, a lot of the shots inside her cabin are very dark to the point where you can't actually see the actor. Like it's just pitch black. And a lot of people can, say that's wow, that's really good lighting and, that's pretty good cinematography. And I just don't quite understand that. Like a lot of the time when people rate films the perfect rating, a 5-star or an A+, I can understand how they get to an A+. However, with this film, I just don't understand it. I don't understand how you can give this film such a high, sort of rating when I just can't see, technical elements uh, such as the visuals and um, the color grading. It just doesn't. It's not up to par as I would like, and I'm
Okay.
being very very nitpicky with this bit.
Oh no, it's okay. I'm loving it. You can't see my face, but I'm smiling away. This is going to be a great conversation, I think.
Yep.
Um, but in terms of the visuals, for me, I agree. There was a couple times, especially when we get those moments between Louise and her child,
Hmm.
where there is a bit of a blue filter, or they try and make us realize that it's a flashback, and so
Yeah.
they, up the yellows or they up the blues, or to tell us that we're in a dream sequence or whatever. Um, and yeah, obviously we both watched this on Amazon Prime through your streaming service. So obviously the quality is pretty crap.
Yeah.
I would love to get this on Blu-ray, and then see the visuals again, especially those dark moments. I feel like the streaming quality, like I noticed myself, I had a bit of screen tear and a bit of sometimes the deep blacks were a bit pixelated,
Yep.
and I was
Yep.
like, oh, that
I saw
doesn't
the
that
same.
doesn't
Yeah.
look, yeah, it doesn't look too good on the stream. But
But
yeah,
you
so
can't fault the
maybe,
film for that, right? Because that's
yeah, for
that's on
sure.
the streaming platforms issue. So yeah, I tried to look past that, but I did have issues with the lighting and the color grading of the film that were actually intended to be in the film.
Yeah. I don't think there was not a blue filter over the whole film, right? There was no consistent filter, at least from what I'm seeing of some of these images.
Yeah, look,
Um,
I'm not quite sure. And
it was just
yeah,
very
there
grey,
there
wasn't it?
probably wasn't, but yeah, the color palette was just um very unsaturated. It was very
Very
gray and
muted.
yeah, very muted. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, but I think personally, I think that works really well with the tone of the film.
Hmm.
I feel like that was necessary. We have this gigantic black spaceship. It's a very anxious time in humanity's existence, and we have all these military cars and all these different objects that are very dark or in camo, and then we have the bright orange hazmat suits or whatever that stand out. Like I really like the visual standpoint of visual appeal of this movie, and
Hmm.
obviously the cinematography is bloody gorgeous.
Yeah. I must
There's a,
admit the cinematography was quite good.
Denny just knows how to do a wide shot. Honestly, he is the king of it.
Hmm.
Whenever there's a big like landscape shot, it just goes on and on. Like
Yeah.
the first time we see the shell or we see the aliens, there's a shot that literally lasts for like 30, 40, 50 seconds. And it just goes slowly in, and then it pans to the left. There's the helicopter,
Yep.
and the helicopter lands. And it's like, oh, my eyes were just glued to the screen. I'm like, oh, this is just gorgeous. It's
Mm.
breathtaking.
It's a
Um,
very wallpapery film, and that's a very weird adjective.
okay.
But like you could take any moment from the film, and it's probably going to look good on a wallpaper. And I'm just thinking
Hmm.
of all of like it might be the shot that you're talking about now, but there was a shot where like yeah, you had the wide pan, and there was like these clouds kind of like pillowing
Oh,
the
yes, that's
hill.
it.
Yeah, that's it.
Mm.
Yeah, it looked pretty beautiful, I must admit.
It was like the clouds were like coming over like a wave,
Yeah.
because obviously this ship is so high, or high enough so that there's some cloud
Mm.
strolling underneath it. Oh, it just looks gorgeous. And I can just tell Danny's like behind the camera. He's like, oh yes,
Yeah.
oh yes.
Roger Deakins.
Yeah, I don't think he was on this. Hang on, let me check. Roger Deakins, because he usually does pair up with Villeneuve, but no, he's not on this one.
No,
But
interesting.
it's Danny's style, man. Like
Yeah.
obviously he has a different director of photography and cinematographer. Um, most of the times, he does collaborate with Roger Deakins quite a bit, but this man's got a good eye. It's just like Christopher Nolan, you know. You can always count on the film to look great,
Hmm.
no matter what the sort of story is. But anyway, talked about visuals a lot. Let's go to the acting. What did you think of Amy Adams as Dr. Louise Banks? What did you think of Jeremy Renner as Ian?
Um, Look, I wasn't too invested in the characters and their arcs. And that's probably because I didn't know a lot about them. Their stories were very underdeveloped in a way, and a lot of it was left up to interpretation. Um, and for me, when you can't really flesh out a character arc or a character development in their overall story, then the acting just can't really match the level that's is desired from Denny V or what he really wants. Um, so yeah, the acting just kind of felt flat for me because it I don't know, it just the story wasn't there, so they couldn't really do a lot with what they were given. And it's a really bad analogy, but you kind of get like a Hayden Christensen situation in the prequels. Like, yeah, people might say he's a bad actor. I don't think he's terrible. But yeah, with what he was given, he did a lot with what he had, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just thinking about some of the final minutes in Revenge of the Sith, um, the George Lucas is like known for his terrible directing and some of his really terrible screenwriting. Um, but Hayden Christensen was able to do a lot with what he was given, um, and it's kind of the opposite here. The character stories just was so two dimensional that the acting just it couldn't get there for me. And I know that Jeremy Renner and Amy Adams are both really, really good actors. So yeah, I don't know why the performance just didn't work for me in this situation.
Interesting. So both of them didn't work. You didn't like Amy Adams more than Jeremy Renner, or vice versa,
Yeah, I just felt like they were just kind of blatantly average for me.
right?
And yeah, like I know they're good actors, so they've definitely got it in them. And people will probably say, oh my god, this is one of Jeremy Renner's best performances. But honestly, yeah, I just like him more so in like Hawkeye and the Avengers. I just find it more exciting, more thrilling. You've got more action. And it might just be like a preference for me. Like I probably just like action as a theme more than like sci-fi and mystery. But yeah, I'm not quite sure.
Jeremy Renner is more suited, I think, to the action roles. It is a bit, yeah. His character for me, not as he didn't have you know a lot to do
Mm,
except sort of just exist.
yeah.
Um, but but I think his performance is fine for me. Amy Adams, I think this is the best performance I've ever seen from her.
Uh-huh.
So how's that for a contrast?
Very
I
interesting, right?
I've seen Amy Adams in some films that she's won Oscars in, like The Fighter, which is a boxing movie. She's
Is that Christian Bale?
sup- yeah, and Mark Wahlberg.
Mm.
She's a supporting actress in that, and she's fantastic in that. And also Catch Me If You Can. She plays the girlfriend of Leonardo DiCaprio, and she's unrecognizable in that movie.
Yeah.
Um, and
Not to
obviously,
mention like the five Zack Snyder films that
yeah,
she's been
yeah,
in.
the Lois Lane action,
Yeah,
yeah,
which obviously isn't as good, but yeah.
yeah, yeah. Look, she doesn't have a lot to work with there, but I think she's acceptable in all of them. Like, I don't
Hmm.
think the problem is her. I think it's just how Lois Lane is as a character, and that's sort of the problems for that are sort of just baked in,
Yeah.
to that character.
And I
But
think that's
this is
kind of what I kind of
oh,
felt here, as Lois Lane, the character, and her performance were kind of tied together. That's kind of what I felt here with her character.
okay.
It's all just kind of thrown into the same big pot that it all just kind of blends together, and the actor's performance can't really rise above what the material was she was given.
Hmm. Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, there's complete contrast. I think this is the best performance I've seen from Amy Adams, and I really loved, the story that took place around her character. With the flashbacks at the start that you think are flashbacks, and then slowly, they feed them throughout the story, and then eventually, there's that realization, and all of the acting between her and Jeremy Renner from Amy Adams' perspective I think was really good. And
Hmm.
especially there are a few lines at the end that really, really got me in the feels. But all of the stuff with the child is the most difficult, acting stuff to do in this film because it's
Yep.
the emotional beats, and I
Mm.
think Amy Adams really nailed them all. Um, Forrest Whitaker's in this movie, so
Saw
we have Lois
Gerrera.
Lane, Hawkeye, and Saw Gerrera. How about
Yep.
that for a trio?
Very interesting.
Forrest Whitaker's fine; he's there, I guess.
Three of the biggest franchises,
Yeah,
possibly of our generation. You've got DC, Star Wars, and Marvel.
yep, they all come together.
Mm.
But yeah, Forrest Whitaker is not much of a character. He's sort of just a general who just shows up and is a bit ignorant and
Yeah.
just the usual stuff. What did you think about the sound in this movie? What did you think about the music? What did you think about the sound effects of like the aliens and stuff?
Um. Yeah. Honestly, I don't really remember it,
Oh my
and
gosh!
yeah, look, you're probably going to get angry at me for that. But yeah, it just didn't really stick with me, and it's not that like I just don't pay attention to this sort of stuff because you've got
Mm,
films like Alien and Predator, which have phenomenal sound design, might I mention, um, and I pay attention to that. So it's not that I didn't pay attention; it's just that it didn't really resonate with me. I didn't remember it, and it didn't stick with me in my head. And I
yeah.
only watched the film like a day or two ago now. So it's very recent and it should still be in my memory, but I don't really remember it.
Oh, right. I might have to play it for you afterwards because
Yep.
this soundtrack was fantastic for me. I really, really liked it. It was very similar to the Blade Runner 2049 soundtrack
Hmm.
in many instances. There's a lot of deep motorbike sounds, where it's just like, wide shot and then it's like
Yeah.
in the
Okay.
background. Um, but yes, I really enjoyed the brooding music, and I think the music really comes through um, when when Denny's sort of building for the big reveal of the shell,
Yep.
and also towards the end of the film where we have some of the more intense sort of action scenes, like, or not really action scenes, but when the film's starting to wrap up and they're starting to hit the emotional beats. I got a bit of uh, Hans Zimmer Time vibes, with that final song that
Okay.
really really elevates the ending.
Yep.
And also I really like the alien noise, so like the noises that the alien made, very creepy and weird, a bit like the
Was it kind of clicking?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
sort of like these acoustic sounds.
That's kind of what I remember it being like, kind of like the Predator, where it's got that kind of clicking
Yeah.
sort of sound.
Mm.
But yeah, if I'm gonna be completely
Very
honest, I don't really
unnerving, sort of
remember.
gets under your skin. You'd be like,
Yeah.
"Ew." It's
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I think we're gonna contrast on everything,
I
on
think we
everything.
will.
So
Yeah.
yeah, interesting. But I'm happy to dive into more detailed thoughts.
Yep.
If you have any. So we're going to spoiler territory now. So if you have not seen the film and you want to go watch it with all of the reveals um, unspoiled. Um, Turn the podcast off now. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.
See ya.
But if you have seen the film, congratulations. It was a great film, wasn't it? And we'll have some more detailed thoughts for you. So Jaden, do you have any specific detailed thoughts that you want to run over?
Yeah, there's a few things that I wanted to touch on. Um, just firstly, I'm not the biggest fan of these. Not I can't really call it a natural disaster. Maybe like a
Oh, like
world
the alien
threat.
comes to Earth
Yeah, I'm not
movie.
the biggest fan of these films. Just to kind of think about some, Rampage, Dwayne Johnson, where you've got military and you've got like this sort of outer world alien sort of threat. Yeah, it's not a genre that really interests me, and I think it's because a lot of the time you're very the story is kind of fixated on this one sort of place. Like this whole film just kind of took place in this one paddock with this one alien spaceship, and to me that's just
Okay.
kind of boring. And I know that it kind of jumps around to the other countries. You've got China with their sort of battleships in the sea, but we only see that for a split second, and then it jumps back.
Okay.
So the film it kind of took place all in this one paddock, and when a film just doesn't move around for me, it doesn't capture my interest. If I'm going to be completely honest, I did turn this film off a few times because I was just kind of bored.
Wow.
I didn't want to say
My
it, but
goodness.
yeah, I turned it off a few times, and I came back the next day solely because I had to watch it. But yeah,
Wow.
it just failed to capture my interest in the whole genre and where it took place.
Goodness me. Right. Yeah, well, I never really thought of that. Obviously, yeah, most of the film does sort of, take place in that one
Mm,
area where the shell
yeah,
has landed in. Is it Canada? Is that where we think it is,
I
or is
think it
it
was no, it was Montana. It was in
so the
America.
US?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, fair enough. Um
How did I remember that?
yeah. Yeah, interesting thing to remember, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah, I never really thought of that. But yeah, okay, I can sort of see that. But I was glued to this movie, so I didn't really. Yeah, I guess that didn't really bother me at all. And I know there's a lot of flashbacks to different areas, but the main two sets are the farm or the big paddock where the shell is, and then you have Lois's house where she's having all the the flashbacks and everything like that.
Hmm.
So yeah, but to me, I never really got bored. I watched it in one sitting. I was glued to it. I was having a great time. I've got lots of capital letters in my notes, which I know means I had a good time
Good
watching it.
time. Yep.
Um, some things like "holy wide shot" in full capitals, like I was invested. I was invested in this movie. Interesting though.
Do you want to hear the one note that I wrote down? A lot of this is just in my head. The
Okay.
one thing I wrote, the one thing I wrote down was, from the start, I already hate the blue filter, and this was like 2 minutes into the film, giving me Man of Steel nightmares with Amy Adams as well. For any viewers watching, I absolutely hated the Man of Steel as well. So
Oh, great. So you spotted the blue filter with the Amy Adams and you're
yep.
like, nah, I'm out. There's two things that I don't like about movies. And
Yep.
they're great. So Arrival really didn't start well for you.
Yeah, and honestly, I kept watching it. Like that's not the point that I turned it off.
Yeah, yeah.
I kept watching it past that. So yeah, I'm not just like completely biased. And when I see a thing that I hate, I don't just turn it off. But yeah, I don't know. It's just when films tend to do a lot of things that I don't enjoy, it just kind of sticks with me, and I can't really look past that. So it's kind of the case with Arrival here.
Right, interesting. Okay. Okay, here comes a question. What did you think about in that first couple minutes we see sort of like this mini story of this child, growing up and eventually, obviously dying of some advanced disease that they don't mention. It's probably got something to do with, the sci-fi elements of the film. But they sort of try to make us cry. They're trying to hit the emotional beats right off the bat.
Hmm.
With like this mini short story with of suffering. And so did that connect with you? It sounds like it didn't.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff just it didn't resonate with me. Unforgettable. I'm really bashing on this film right now, but yeah, it's just that sort of stuff that, like, when I'm not invested in a story, I don't tend to sort of get emotionally invested in it. Um, it's not going to make me cry. It's not going to make me tear up, even though to the average person it probably should. Um, yeah, it didn't really click with me.
Okay, interesting. Well, it didn't certainly like it didn't make me cry. I was a bit off getting to that level.
Mhm.
But I certainly for this Amy Adams character, Dr. Louise Banks, I think her full name is, and so I was thoroughly invested. I was like, oh gosh, this is horrible.
You've
Just
seen
going
this film
through,
before, right?
I have,
You
yeah.
have.
So
Okay.
I watched this film maybe a few years ago, maybe a year or so after its release,
Mm-hmm.
and so I remembered the big twist. I But that's it. I completely, you know, everything else was sort of like a blur. That as I watched it, the pieces sort of came back together. But there are certain aspects, very important aspects of this film that I completely forgot.
So
So I
just
had a
just so
great
we're on the
time watching.
same page here, the big twist was that Jeremy Renner and Amy Adams had a child,
Yeah,
correct? Yeah. Okay. I don't
yeah.
know. That to me just it's not a big twist. I kind of saw it coming, and I don't want to sound like a pretentious, sort of douchebag here, but I saw it coming in the final minutes. I was like, yeah, Jeremy Renner is definitely gonna have a kid with
Yeah,
her.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, they definitely give you hints throughout, but definitely at the start, like obviously I remembered that. Um, but at the start, I think the mystery was sort of there. But I think perhaps the bigger plot twist is you're shown flashbacks at the start, and you're told that she's divorced
Yeah.
at the start, and so you think that's already happened, and so then we pick off right where those flashbacks left off with Louise going about her day, and she's a bit miserable because we think she's lost her child and she's divorced. She goes about her day, then she finds the aliens, etc. But the big reveal is that those flashbacks aren't actually flashbacks, they're what happens in the future.
Yeah.
I think that's the bigger twist
Mm.
than Jeremy Renner and Amy Adams had a baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they end up having a child, and then obviously, I think they explained it somewhere. Jeremy Renner ends up going out to get some milk or something. I don't know, something like that.
He never comes back.
It never comes
Yeah.
back.
No, it's because Amy Adams' character tells him that she has to die, that she's going to die,
Uh,
because she knows, because Amy Adams knows she can, she's had these visions. So that's the whole thing, the big emotional thing at the end is if you could see your entire life, um, you know, roll out before your eyes, would you change anything? Or can you even change anything?
yeah.
And so that's the part that really gets me. When she's talking to Jeremy Renner, obviously this is before they fall in love and have a baby, etc. But she knows what's going to happen,
Hmm.
and yeah, that scene just really gets me.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. And it's probably lended to the fact that like a lot of the stuff just flew over my head. Like I thought I understood it, but obviously clearly I didn't. Um, and it's not the fact that like I wasn't paying attention because it was the only thing I was doing. It's just that a lot of the stuff was just so blurry that I didn't understand it. Um,
Hmm.
and like I've seen Tenet and I've seen Inception, which are probably regarded as some of the most, mind bending films ever. So it's not that I don't understand the genre. It's just that I don't know, something about it. It just didn't stick with me. It was just kind of a blur and a mess in a way.
Because there is a sort of non-linear timeline,
Yep.
um, introduced sort of towards the end. Obviously, we sort of there's the reveal that time isn't linear for these aliens. Um, so, do you think that sort of element was a bit, I don't know, really like mishandled, or was a bit too complex, or like it sounds like you weren't able to appreciate it as much as, I don't know, I
Yeah,
appreciated it.
it's odd because yeah, you're not a bad film reviewer. Like you're one of the best I know, and usually, what you say goes, and what you say is pretty close to what I would rate the film as well. However, yeah, I just don't quite understand how the storyline all kind of fits in together. It's just very odd to me that people regard this as a masterpiece, and just the whole storyline and the timeline and how it was put together, just it kind of felt like it was all just thrown on the plate and sent out. It was just weird to me.
Okay, interesting. Really, yeah. There's quite a contrast here.
Yeah.
Going to get contrasted all the way, I think. Let's go. I've got a few notes from the start of the film. I was a bit impressed with Danny V and his camera skills
Hmm.
at the very start of the film. When obviously Amy Adams is going about her day. She's gone to university. She's obviously a lecturer of some kind, and
Yep.
in language. And she's walking through, and obviously we see there's a big TV thing with the aliens have arrived essentially, and all of the kids are focused on the TV, but we don't see anything. And Danny V doesn't want us to see anything because he wants to build that tension. He doesn't want to show it to us. He wants
Hmm.
us to think, oh my gosh, the aliens have arrived. What do they look like? Where are they? Are these people going to freak out? It just goes about her day. She sits down. The kids are like, can you put the TV on? So she puts the TV on. And then instead of getting a shot of the TV, right? That's what most directors would do. They would show us a shot of the TV with the aliens, and then boom, mystery over, tension released. There they are.
Hmm.
Um, Instead, he shows us the opposite. He shows us a reaction shot. It's like this big wide shot of like these 10 kids that are sitting in the lecture hall or
Yep.
whatever. And it just slowly zooms in, and we just get to see the reaction on their faces.
Hmm.
And seeing the reaction on their faces is so much more interesting than just seeing some generic news anchor go, oh, and by the way, aliens have arrived and here they are. Here's a zoom in shot of what they look like. Mystery solved. That's not tension,
Yeah. Yeah.
the shot of the zoom in, the slow zoom in of all of these kids' faces, and then we put ourselves in that position. We go, oh my gosh, like what would it be like? We can feel what it is like to be in that room
Mm.
instead of just going like, oh, is that CNN or is that a rip off of another news organization that who's reporting that?
Yeah.
Um,
And I think at one
yeah, so
point in the film we might have had that, but no, yeah, I do appreciate that. Danny V kind of going against the medium and finding new ways to create tension. It's nothing that I've seen before. It's kind of an unorthodox way. Um, yeah, it's interesting when you explain it like that because that kind of it enlightens me as to why people enjoy this sort of film. Why, technically speaking, it may be a good film. Um, so yeah, that's probably one of the first things, other than the cinematography that you've mentioned, that actually can revive the film for me. It makes sense as to why you would give it such an acclaimed review and rating.
yeah, yeah. I've made you watch 3 Danny movies so far,
Hmm.
but I want you to watch one more, mate. I want you to
Oh
go
god,
one more, and it's got to be Prisoners, mate. It's got to be Prisoners. I think
Prisoners,
if you're gonna like any of the Danny movies, it's gonna be Prisoners. Like that's
Prisoners.
my final bet. If
What
you don't
about
like
Gone
that,
Girl? I've been wanting to watch Gone
no,
Girl.
that's David Fincher.
Oh,
Don't
that's
worry.
David Fincher.
Oh,
Okay.
you'll like that one though for sure.
Okay.
Same. You're the same sort of thing with David Fincher, actually, aren't you? Your Social Network wasn't a big fan,
I mean, I
and
watched
I
Fight
was.
Club.
Oh, you liked Fight Club,
I
yeah, for
loved
sure.
Fight
Yeah,
Club.
yeah, yeah. But in Prisoners, right? There's a very similar shot, right? I've spoken about it before on the podcast, actually. So in Prisoners, the basic plot is like these children get stolen, right? And the family's inside having Thanksgiving dinner, and the children are outside playing. And there's a shot of from like the curb,
Hmm.
and it's looking at the house, and the shot is just off this tree that's outside. And the shot just slowly zooms in on the tree for no reason except for Danny's like, oh, look how good this tree looks. But it zooms in and sort of some dark, sort of brooding music's going. And we're thinking, oh my gosh, the kids are getting stolen. What? I need to see. Where have they gone? And so in the same way, that sort of shot makes us more, more on edge
Uh-huh.
than a shot of the kids in the distance, like, you know, getting picked up
Getting
by some
taken.
random,
Yeah.
yeah, and then like whisked off in a van or whatever. You
Yeah.
know,
And
it's
I
another
must
example.
applaud, I must applaud him for doing that. It's different, right? And I think, at times film tends to get quite repetitive. Filmmakers see what succeeds in one film and they just tend to copy that formula for their film and other films. So when you get something like this that's different, it's fresh and it's innovative and it's something new to look at. So yeah, you must respect the film for doing that, being original in its own way.
Yeah, I must say I really like the tone of the opening of the film with the aliens arriving and the mass panic. You know, Louise goes outside and there's the car parks full. Everyone's trying to leave. People are, running into each other. And then
Hmm.
there's planes going across the sky. I thought that was so cool,
Yep.
seeing like jets fly across. I'm like, oh my gosh, like everyone is losing their minds, which is exactly what would happen. People would go mental. They would give up on their jobs. They would just go straight home and then they would just watch TV for the rest of the day.
Hmm.
So I really enjoyed the opening tone of the film. This real brooding atmosphere of, oh gosh, like why are they here? Who are they? What's going on? But yeah, I don't know.
Mm.
Anything else from the sort of opening that you want to talk about?
I'm kind of all out if I'm going to be completely honest.
Okay, that's all
Yeah.
right. I will carry this podcast.
Carry the podcast.
All right. Funny piece of dialogue. Louise is on her phone to her mum. She says, "Mum, please don't bother with that channel. How many times do I need to tell you those people are idiots?" So shout out to CNN. Obviously, that's referring to them because they are idiots.
Whoa, we need to keep some credibility.
No. CNN can, get stuffed, mate. I said only Denny V can make a university look good with a wide shot because most universities look absolutely horrible.
Hmm.
But this one looked nice. Lots of TV exposition. So there are lots of news
Yep.
footage. However, Denny V does it better than most by being creative with it. So we'll get a shot of Louise driving home from university, and over sound, we get the voice of the radio saying, "Oh, and there are 12 spaceships, and they're all just arrived, and we don't know, they haven't made contact," and all of that. So that's a lot better than just getting a full screen shot of some random person talking on the news, which I've already said. But yeah, I don't know. Sometimes when the news comes on, like in films like Joker, when the character is just looking at a TV and the TV has a news feed and it's just very boring. It's like, can we please get the plot moving? But obviously,
Hmm.
the TV exposition is getting the plot moving,
Yeah.
but just in a very non-creative and exciting way. It's just a
Yeah.
bit boring.
Yeah.
Um, long reaction shots. Obviously, this is another thing I want to talk about. Right, it's in 2049 as well. Blade Runner 2049. So one of the highlights in terms of cinematography again from this movie is whenever there's a conversation, whenever there's dialogue going on, because Danny V, he knows what's important again.
Mm.
So Louise is in her office and this general, Saw Gerrera, comes along and he's trying to recruit her, and like Forrest Whitaker, his character, we don't care who he is. We're not interested. We don't know him. Why should we care? Who we do care about, though, is Amy Adams, her character, right?
Hmm.
So we get the camera on Amy Adams, right? She's having a conversation. The camera flicks between the two people. But then there's the big reveal. It's like, we want to recruit you, right? The camera goes to Amy Adams. She asks a question. And then Saw Gerrera answers the question, right? But instead of the camera flipping from Amy Adams to Forrest Whitaker, it stays on
Stays on
Amy
her.
Adams
Okay.
because we want that reaction.
Yep.
We just get the still frame the conversation continues. We're just looking at Amy Adams. The exact same thing is in Blade Runner 2049 when Ryan Gosling's character is talking to Robin Wright's character, when Kay, the character, is having this realization that he might be the special, like he might be, the special
Yeah.
from the Lego movie. He might be the special. Um, and it's the same deal. The camera's just focused on Kay the entire time. The conversation continues, but we get to see Ryan Gosling put in a damn good acting performance. So another one of those instances where I had to credit my boy Danny V.
And it's a good way to do it because I think it gives the actor kind of like a platform to show how good they are. So it's good that he did that. Yeah.
Were you anticipating seeing the aliens? Were you, was the tension building for you? Were you like excited, intrigued about, seeing these aliens and seeing the big shell and everything like that? Did that tension get to you?
Not really, if I'm going to be completely honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate, the lengths that, Denny V put in to create the tension. However, it's just the story was just, it wasn't there for me. And if it's not there for me, then I'm just not invested in it.
Were you not really, scared, like it's a horror movie, but when they're first sort of going into the shell,
Yeah.
were you sort of like a bit anxious for them?
Yeah, at times I thought, some massive aliens were gonna, come out and rip them apart.
Like aliens.
Yeah, it never happened, unfortunately. I think the film desperately needs something like that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, but the tension in terms of that was there. I was nervous for Amy Adams' character, Louise Banks. Yeah, but it's kind of like a unintentional tension in a way, and I know that's kind of a really bad way to put it. But yeah, when the tension wasn't meant to be there, or it was just kind of meant to be less subtle, it kind of felt overbearing for me. And then when tension was meant to be building up, I just kind of wasn't invested or paying attention to it.
Okay. Yeah. There's a moment where the camera focuses on one of the guys. He's running his hand along the bottom of the shell, right? And we get a bit of a close up of just his hand, scraping along, and then they get to the door, right? And so there's nothing so his hand goes into nothingness, right? There's just nothing to scrape his hand on anymore.
Yep.
And the camera just follows him, just scraping along, and then woof, open space. Oh, that's a bit creepy. I don't know, something like that you probably have just completely forgotten.
Yeah, I don't remember that, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, it's one of those moments where just like a close up was just so good at just like giving us that anxious feeling, because I was like, you can imagine yourself, running your hand along the side, and then oof, there's nothing there anymore. Oh, I can't feel anything. That's not good. Mystery. I don't know, building the tension for me. But yeah, that was a good close up, effective use of a close up, I think.
Okay.
And it's just like this random guy, like we don't even know who it is.
And we probably don't need to know who it is. It's just an effective way of getting that across to the audience.
But yeah, it was just one of those little moments that I just really appreciated.
Yep.
I said the first meeting was pretty intense, with the fog, and obviously these aliens. Are they gonna kill everyone? Are they gonna communicate? Are they gonna hide away, or they're coming out slowly behind the fog? Did you find that intense at all, or what did you think of the design of the actual aliens themselves?
Yeah, look, I promise I'm not just like answering, probably the opposite as to what you want for every question.
No, I don't want to answer. I want your answer. That's all.
Okay. Yeah, look, I think the aliens, their design was pretty cool. The whole fog element with the, kind of split wall and them figuring out how to sort of communicate between them. It was an interesting dynamic. However, I don't know, something about it was just, it didn't work with me in a way that I probably would have wanted.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, yeah, and it might just be biased that I like action films and I had to have some sort of action in it, but it just, it failed to capture my attention with it. I think the way that they probably figured out um, what they were saying, I think that was done quite well.
Okay.
However, that's probably one of the only things that kind of worked in that alien human sort of dynamic for me.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I also enjoyed, that journey that they went on of discovering, how to communicate with them. There is a bit
Yep.
of a time jump. There is a bit of time jump. Like at one stage, they're like, "What does that mean?" And then, like in the next scene, they're like, she's got like a laptop with all these different symbols, and she knows what they mean. I'm like, hang on a second, how long have we been here? So would have liked a bit of exposition, maybe showing us how long they were actually trying to communicate with them,
Fair enough. Yep.
because there is a bit of a time jump. At one stage they don't really have an idea.
Yeah.
And then the next scene, she's going up with like a whiteboard that has like all of the symbols, and she's crafting words and sending them to the aliens, and they're sending things back, and she's
Yeah.
interpreting it. I'm like, hang on, that was a bit quick. There is something that I don't like in this movie, though. So I think perhaps we can both both jump on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's this moment where it's a classic Lois Lane "I hate you" moment of Amy Adams. Right, her character says they're having this confrontation with the general, and the general is not happy with how she's been doing, wanting to speed up or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in order to prove a point, Louise brings up this story, right, of the Australians and the indigenous people and the white settlers who came to Australia. And the settlers said to the indigenous people, "What is that?" They pointed to a kangaroo.
Yeah.
And they point to this animal. They say, "What's that?" And the indigenous people say, "Kangaroo," right? And so then Amy Adams then says, "Kangaroo means I don't understand. It doesn't mean what the animal is,"
Yeah.
right? And so you think, "Oh, damn, that's impressive. Like that's a good story." I can see how it proves the point, because if you say, "What is this?" and the other person says, "I don't understand," you're going to think that this glass that I'm holding
I don't understand.
is I don't understand,
Yeah.
right? So it's a really good example, right?
Yep.
If it actually happened. But then the scene
didn't.
ends,
Yeah.
and Jeremy Renner says that's a great story, and Amy Adams says it's not true, but it still proves my point.
Yeah.
Lady, if it's not true, it doesn't prove your point. Because if I pointed to this and I say, "What's this?" and you tell me it's a glass, then we've effectively established communication, haven't we?
Yeah. And it's kind of a missed opportunity, isn't it, for them to do something like very interesting that I've never seen before. And it's interesting that you brought that up, because it kind of just flew over my head. But yeah, I don't know. It just kind of seems like a missed opportunity to do something that would have been really interesting.
Yeah, instead we get this sort of, I don't know, sassy sort of contradiction. She's just lying to this general.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's an interesting story, and it works in theory. It sounds like it could be an actual communication problem with someone saying, "I don't understand," and the other person thinking that, and misinterpreting that information. But if you just made up the story in your head, then it doesn't effectively work as evidence for your argument.
Yeah.
That's just not how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Amy Adams, but that's not how it works.
Yeah, it's not how it works.
We don't do that
But
here.
yes, I wanted to take note of that, because that is one thing that I just thought, hang on a second, that's not right.
We're better than this. I'm sorry, just
We're smarter than this.
bad meme injections
100%.
going on here.
Yeah. What else have I got? Oh, here's a scene that we can talk about. there's a dream sequence where Amy Adams is in her bed and she's talking to someone. She turns to the right, the camera cuts to the right, and we see a big alien in her house. Like this massive alien.
Yeah.
Just out of nowhere. Unexpected, big thing in a room, which we didn't expect to be there. Reminds you of Enemy, doesn't it?
Kind of. Yeah. Kind of. Very scarring.
So for those who might not have seen Enemy, probably the best scene in the entire film, for me at least, was the very end of the film, the final shot, where Jake Gyllenhaal walks into his room.
Yeah.
And his wife has turned into a giant spider. And the giant spider doesn't do anything, but it recoils from Jake Gyllenhaal's character. And the symbolism, if you get the symbolism, and what the spider does, because the spider's terrified of him, the spider moves away. It's very haunting. But this was like a sort of cheap jump scare.
Yeah. Yeah. It didn't really have any symbolism, right? It was just a jump scare.
It was just like, oh my god, the alien's in her house.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh wait, it's a dream.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a, nightmare Batman scenario.
And I
It's
don't
like,
know which one I preferred more, because I didn't like Enemy's ending, and this one just kind of felt just like an opportunity for Denny to get like a few jump scares in.
Yeah.
So I don't know which one I like more.
Keep the audience on their toes, or in your case, awake.
Awake. You're not wrong. But yeah.
Another thing, cool little detail I noticed, the complication in the film is the first thing the aliens say is offer weapon. So, not the best news to receive from an alien. So all these countries, we sort of go into like a geopolitics sort of, crisis.
Yeah.
Where China and Russia are thinking about
Blowing
declaring war. Yeah. And so we see this like big like Zoom call with like all of these countries, and like tons of countries disconnect from the Zoom call. But the only ones left are Australia, the UK, and Denmark. And you have things like, Siberia leaves, Russia leaves, China leaves. And I thought that was just really cool, because the only ones left are the closest allies of the US.
Yeah.
And they're going to stick with the US no matter what. So I just really like that from a geopolitical standpoint of just the accuracy of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, because I think this story is told in a very realistic sort of way, but then it has aliens and time travel. So it tries to make you believe that it's possible, even though it has such far-reaching things like not time travel per se, but you get to look into the future. That's pretty nuts. It's pretty far from normal, but it's grounded in this sort of reality.
Yeah, and it's an interesting way to do it, right? Because I think Denny V was probably going for the fact that he wants the audience to think that this was possible. He wants to drag them into this reality, and kind of establish the fact that this could happen to us. It's probably widely rumored that aliens are probably going to come to our planet one day, and we're going to have to go through this whole situation. So I think sort of bringing in the element of the military and all of these world leaders kind of discussing the fact of what they should do with it, it's interesting, and I think it kind of establishes the film as being more realistic rather than just some sci-fi movie that doesn't really feel like it's ever going to happen.
Yeah. And one of the problems with those sorts of movies is that the aliens arrive in America and the rest of the world just seemingly don't care.
Yeah, they don't even know.
Yeah, it's like it's all America based. Like the aliens, they come to America, they don't want to go anywhere else. They've heard America's the best country or something, and they're just there, just heading there. And the entire movie will be set in America. It'll deal with the American government, etc.
It always seems like the aliens always land down in America, like it's the central hub of the Earth.
Yeah. It's like, hang on a second.
Have you ever seen Aliens in the Attic?
I think I have,
You
but I
have?
can't remember
It's
anything.
a
I can't
horrendous
remember
film, and it
anything.
all takes place in America.
Yeah, it's just like nowhere else exists
Yeah.
according to Hollywood. Um, so let's. Oh, first off, I want to say the simple action of the aliens, they become a bit, cheesed off with the humans, because the humans are, I don't know, they're like, oh, they tried to blow them up. That's right.
Yeah.
The US, they tried to blow up the aliens at one stage, which is stupid decision, stupid government.
Yeah, I was
Classic
thinking
movie
about it,
stuff.
right? They don't understand like the effect that could have. Like all of the other
Hmm.
alien aircrafts could like declare war just instantly. So
Yeah.
probably wasn't the smartest
Hmm.
move in terms of the US, but then again, it might also be very realistic. What do
Yeah,
Americans do? We blow stuff up.
that's a fair point. Yeah, I think one of those tropes in movies is like the general that's ignorant and wants to go in and blow stuff up
Yeah.
because like they get some sort of hit out of it, or they just have fun looking at fire or whatever. Um, but yeah, so they try to blow these aliens up, and the aliens obviously aren't too happy about it. So what they do is the craft starts to move, and everyone's thinking like, oh my gosh, the aliens are going back, or they're going to attack us, or whatever. All they do is rise above like maybe like 100, 200 meters in the air, and they just stop again. I thought that was just so powerful because now the humans, they can't reach them,
Yeah.
so they're done sort of communicating. They're like, oh, stuff these humans. And honestly, like, I don't blame them.
Yeah.
um, they're like, I've had enough of talking to these people, but we're not leaving yet. Let's just rise above slightly and stay there. I think that was really cool.
Just tempt them.
Yeah, just like, you can't reach us anymore, but we're still here. Huh? Get stuffed. um, so I like that. I like that little moment. So, final act of the movie then, where you sort of, get a few more hints about, Jeremy Renner's the father, and, I am your father, and there's
Your father.
non-linear timeline. She has the Chinese dude's phone number. Um, what did you think about the ending? What did you think about all of the pieces falling into place? Did they fall into place for you?
Yeah, look, I think the ending was quite well done. I think the fact that Jeremy Renner is kind of unveiled as the father in this situation, even though I saw it coming, I think it was a good way to end it. I think the whole thing with Louise going up to the alien spacecraft, that was quite good. Um, it just felt like kind of just a average generic ending for me. Nothing special, nothing too bad. Just a pretty good ending to tie everything together.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I really liked the sort of how the non-linear timeline was sort of worked into the finale,
Yep.
and sort of the contrast between the two, of especially when, after when she's on the phone to the Chinese guy, and we're getting flashbacks from the future because she's seeing the future and in the present. That was really cool, very tense moment. And then I think probably my favorite part of the ending though is when she's like standing next to Jeremy Renner, and she's like talking, like she knows that she's gonna have a baby with this guy.
Hmm.
Her baby's gonna grow up and then die of this, you know, unstoppable illness. And it's like, that's some powerful stuff. And she's like, and then she hugs him, and she's like, I forgot what it felt like to be held by you. And I'm like, first of all, my first reaction was, if I heard that from someone and I had never held them before, I would be very weirded out.
Yeah.
Imagine hugging someone for the first time and then they whisper in your ear, I forgot what it felt like to be held by you.
Yeah, that's a bit odd, right?
That is a bit odd. But then my second reaction is, that's a great emotional sort of piece of dialogue to, bring us back to reality from all of these future. We get, she can feel in the future the sort of sorrow that she's going to go through, but now she's just starting, and it's like, oh, it's a bit of Inception. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it. I think the emotional payoff works more for me in
Okay.
films like this than it did for like Inception, for instance.
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair
Just
enough.
because I noted it just then. Also, a lot of times in movies, right, when there's a love interest, they'll kiss at the end,
Hmm.
and it always feels so rushed. Like Superman and Lois, they have a good kiss at the end, and I'm
Yeah.
like, you guys met like half an hour ago.
Yep. I
Um,
know what you're about to say. Yep.
yeah, and they hug instead of kiss, and I'm like, that, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
Yeah, and I actually
that is
quite
how
like
you
that,
do
right?
it.
Yeah.
Yes,
And for a second there, it kind of looked like they were going to go in for it, but
yeah,
then um Amy Adams just kind of turns into the hug, and I think it was
yeah.
a better way to do it. I quite like that. Yeah.
Mm. I feel like movies should do this so much more often, bro, because we obviously know that like they do fall in love and etc., but there's no romantic chemistry between the two from what we've seen,
Yep.
and there's no sort of physical attraction from what we've seen between the two. So if they were to kiss, I was like, that would have knocked my rating down almost immediately.
Hmm.
Like that would have, it really would have suffered because I hate when that happens, man. When they just rush into it and they just kiss, I'm like, that's unrealistic. That would not
Because
happen.
you might have it on Amy Adams' character's part, right? Louise might want to do that, but Jeremy Renner, like, he doesn't even like know her, so like that would have
Yeah,
just been
exactly.
like completely blindsided for his character.
Mm,
It makes sense for Amy Adams's character, but not Jeremy Renner's. So I think
yeah.
finding the mutual ground of a hug works a lot better in this situation.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. It works better in terms of establishing the relationship because we don't see the relationship. It's sort
Yeah,
of like the foundations.
and that's why
They sort of
films like the Rise of Sky. That's why films like The Rise of Skywalker just are horrendous with that. Like, oh my god, where did that come from?
yeah, and they had like 3 films to set that up too,
And
and
they
they
still
they
managed
still
to
didn't.
destroy it.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. But yeah, I mean that sort of brings us to the end. Do you have anything else you want to add or
No, no, I'm
okay?
good.
I've got a few questions that I jotted down for you.
Yep.
Do you think this would be better if Christopher Nolan directed it?
Look, I don't want to be biased. I
It's
like
got that
Nolan,
time element.
and
It's got
yeah,
that time element.
it does have the time element. And in a way, this kind of felt like a Christopher Nolan film. So,
Mm,
um, because I like Christopher Nolan more as a director, I want to say yes. However, I think, given the same source material and the story and the characters and the writing, I don't think it could have improved much upon what Denis could have done. Um,
okay.
they're very similar with their filmmaking. The time elements and the cinematography. It's very similar.
Yeah, yeah. It is very pristine looking, very
Yep.
visually appealing. Do you think this is Danny V's best film that
Um,
you've seen?
that I've seen, no. I liked Blade Runner 2049 more, which I think I gave
Okay,
an A minus.
interesting. All right, sounds good. How did or will people get confused by the non-linear storytelling?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
okay,
you,
that's
you
a
are
good.
undoubtedly going to get confused by this. I would like to think that I am somewhat of a time travel enthusiast.
Yeah.
So if you're not into Nolan and you haven't seen Inception or Interstellar or anything like that, you're going to be like, well, what the hell is going on here? You're not going to understand it. So
Mm,
yes, I think to the average viewer, you are not going to understand this, and even to people um, who are somewhat inclined to what time travel and non-linear time elements are, you're probably also going to have a hard time sort of understanding what's going on here.
okay, interesting. I think yeah, for me, I think it's easier than every single Nolan film that
Okay.
I've watched
Yep.
in terms of the ones that deal with time anyway. Um, but yeah, it does require a bit of thinking, but not
Yeah.
not too much.
And
Not too. It's not Tenet.
maybe it's because I'm more invested in the movie that I'm paying more attention with Nolan. Like I'm watching Tenet and I'm kind of thinking ahead. I'm thinking, is Sator going to do this? Is this going to happen? I'm paying attention to it, And then with a film like this, where I'm not more invested, I'm kind of drawn away from the film, so I'm not going to understand it as much.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point.
Mm.
Another question. This one was a bit preemptive. See, this is me thinking that you were going to like the film.
Yep.
Uh, what does Danny V do differently than other directors?
I think Denny V. I think he gets more so caught up on making a film that is technically a good film, um, rather than making it an enjoyable film.
Okay.
And that's a lot with the films that I've watched. Like, I understand how Enemy is a good film technically to some people, and I understand how Blade Runner 2049 is probably one of the best films ever made in terms of, cinematography and camera work and all of that. And in times, I think Denny V probably just gets too caught up on making a film that's going to, please the Academy, and it's going to win awards, and it's going to, pass every other film in its category. And maybe at times you just have to make a film that the people are just going to love. It's got the action in it. It's got a nice story. It's got some depth to it. And I think Denny V just gets way too caught up on making a film that just does everything right, but it's not a fun film.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Um, I wanted to ask you about the pacing of the film. Like,
Yep.
I know you sort of had problems from the get go, but did you feel like there was any sort of period of the film, beginning, middle, or end that really dragged for you? Do you think the film was a bit too long? Do you think it was too short? Like, what
Um,
what are your thoughts?
I can't quite remember what I said at the start, but I didn't really feel as if there were pacing issues. I felt as if the film was just more so one big pacing issue. It it was just very slow, and it took its time, not in any particular areas, but the whole length through, it was a very slow film. And like I said at the
Yeah.
start, Denny V is, for me at least, known to be a slow filmmaker. He takes his time with, establishing certain things. So the whole film, it just kind of felt very slow, and it took its time to build up to, the ending and the big plot reveals and everything. It was just a very it was cautious of what it was, its runtime, and it just kind of filled in all of the gaps. And yeah, it just didn't, it didn't go fast at any points. It didn't, slow down. And I think films should do that. I think that films that have like a massive spike in action and then, slow it down for a bit, I quite like that, because, it builds you up, and then you got a moment to relax. But the whole film was just like relax, relax, relax. And it kind of felt like you were just sitting in a sauna, just like relaxing the whole film, and nothing's happening.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting, interesting. All right, I got one more question. Danny V's next project is Dune
Yep.
or Dune, starring, a star-studded cast, incredible cast.
Very good cast.
Looks like it's going to be a very big budget sci-fi movie.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it might be coming out this year, actually, in cinemas, towards the end of the year, perhaps. So I wanted to ask, are you excited for that? I know you probably aren't too familiar with the Dune sort of story or lore, but do you think you'll check that out?
I actually just rewatched the trailer the other day, and I must say it feels more like it's along the Blade Runner 2049 sort of, um, Denny V sort of film, rather than like an art house film, as you explained.
Mm,
So yeah, generally I'm going to be more excited for that, because it looks like it has the action. It looks like it's got scenes that are going to be thrilling, and it's going to be a cinematic experience. And I think it's actually a two-part film, which I actually quite like sometimes. So yeah, you've got that as well. It looks like it blends, what I like in films, which is a lot of action and a lot of, art house, a lot of technical elements that are going to make the
mm,
film good. So yeah, I'm actually quite excited for June, and you've got Timothy Chalamet, who I think is actually quite a good actor. So yeah, I'm quite excited for that.
Yeah, at least we can count on it being a visual feast.
Yeah,
It's going to be something incredible to check out in the cinema because I haven't seen a Danny V movie in the cinema yet.
yeah.
So it'll be a first, but it'll look fantastic, I imagine. But yeah, with that said, if you don't have anything else to add, we'll go to the music segment of
Let's
the
do it.
week or of the movie. So every week or every movie we do, every episode, we put a maximum of 2 or a minimum of 1 song from each movie into the Rewatch playlist, which is a playlist on Spotify. You can check it out by visiting the link in the description below. This week, we have 2 entries by yours truly, because I took care of it. And I encourage you, Jaden, to listen to
To
these
listen.
too.
I
Yeah,
always do,
and
so I'm definitely
yes,
going to listen to them.
please do. So we have first up is called "On the Nature of Daylight." It was a song that I'm pretty sure was made for the movie. It's not
Yep.
it doesn't have lyrics. It doesn't have lyrics. It's just a instrumental, but works really well with the sort of brooding and mysterious tone of the film.
Yep.
And then we also have a song called "Arrival." So fair enough. It's the song. It's the song that is, or the soundtrack that plays when we first see the shell,
Okay.
when we get that helicopter shot. And so the music in this instance was by Johan Johansson.
What a
And
great name.
let's just check out
What else he's
some
done?
other things. Yeah, let's if we don't mind. Johan Johansson. Click on his name right there. It's going to take us through. He has done quite a few other Denis films: Prisoners, Sicario, The Theory of Everything, and some other lesser known films. I think that's sort of
The
the
Theory
main
of
ones.
Everything, was that with Eddie Redmayne?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
and Emilia Clarke, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, the music in Prisoners is great too. So obviously he is a collaborator with Danny V.
Okay. Awesome.
So yeah, we haven't encountered him before, but I'm sure we will encounter him again at some stage,
Yep.
hopefully. But yeah, Arrival, the soundtrack is awesome. I think it's probably was snubbed by the Oscars, to be honest, but works really well with the tone of the film, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So, final thoughts, mate. Bit nerve wracking.
Oh,
First off,
who's going
can
first?
I just say,
Yep.
before any of us goes, this has been the hardest movie for me to rate ever on the podcast in the
Really?
history of the podcast. Yes, because I am torn between 2 ratings,
And I know what the ratings are.
and I was like, I watched it, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna give it this rating.
Yeah.
And I did my letterbox review, and then I was like, let me sleep on it, because I don't know, it might go back down to an A. And I was like, oh, maybe it should be an A. And since then, I've been, oh, goodness me, I don't know.
Yeah.
But should I just go first?
Do you want some time to think about it? Because I'm set on what mine is. So
Okay, you go for it then.
do you want me to go first? Okay. Look,
Yeah.
honestly, it's probably been one of the hardest ones for me to rate as well, and it's probably just because I wanted to like this film more than I actually did. Yeah, it just wasn't there for me. It didn't really intrigue me as much as I would have hoped. Um, I can usually understand how people enjoy a film and how they know it's a 5-star rating, but for me it just wasn't a 5-star rating, I'm sorry, I just don't understand how on earth it's a 5-star rating. Um, look, uh, there were very little things that I liked in the film, and I hate to say it, man, but it's the third film that I'm gonna actually fail on the podcast.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Okay. And I think I've made it pretty clear as to why I failed it over the hour and a half that we've been talking today. Yeah, it's just it wasn't there for me. I wasn't intrigued. There's no rewatchability in it for me. I don't ever intend on going back for this film. Um,
Goodness
like I
me.
said with the color grading, it was just everything about it was just so bland and boring to look at. There were, the few good shots that there were. That's about all I could take from it. Just those amazing shots. Obviously, I don't remember the music. I don't remember some of the scenes. I watched it 2 days ago, and it's already out of my mind. I mean,
Oh,
what is that saying, right? And look, if you're gonna end up, hating on my review here, fine, that's okay. Film is subjective. People are gonna hate it, people are gonna love it. Everyone's gonna be different, and it's pretty relevantly clear as to why I said this is the biggest change, or the biggest differentiation we're gonna have on the podcast here. I know you're gonna give it an A or an A plus. And just honestly, like I don't intend to sway your rating here, but
mm,
uh, just go from an initial thought. What did you think about the film, man? Like, we've been talking here today, and the rating that I'm about to give was my initial rating. You
mm.
have enlightened me to some things that were good about the film that I didn't originally think about. However, I just went with my original rating. So yeah, if you are
Okay.
gonna sit on the edge. Just go with what you want. Um, yeah, but in saying all of that, I'm going to give it a D plus, which is right on the edge of a C minus. I was contemplating the C minus, but I just didn't enjoy it, man. Like, yeah,
Interesting. No, okay. I guess it's just, it's just different strokes for different folks. It's just
yeah.
one of those movies that just splits the middle in this instance. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I should apologize because I thought you would really love
No,
this movie.
no, 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 no. Please don't apologize. I wanted to love the film. And it again, I want to reiterate this if I haven't already said it. I think I've already added it back onto my watch list because I want to give it another watch and I want to love it. So, it, even though it doesn't have any rewatchability to me, I still want to go back and give it another try because I want to like it. So,
Okay.
if that's
Yeah.
anything, that's yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's always a good sign. If you feel like it might deserve another chance.
yeah,
But yeah, obviously, I'm not gonna sit here and try and debunk your rating and try and say that it's objectively wrong or anything like that. It's like how you felt about the film. You know, Many times, both you and myself have gone into movies that have been critically well received and gone, wait, what? Really?
Taxi Driver.
Yeah,
Martin
yeah.
Scorsese's
Taxi Driver
crying right now.
Taxi Driver being the main one, and other movies. Sure, I'm sure whenever we get round to watching 2001: A Space Odyssey, it'll be this exact same, mate. Honestly, I just know. But even like movies like The Shining, for me, look, we spoke about this the other day, and that one just doesn't work for me. And I probably would give it, a C or something like that. And film nerds would just kill me for that
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
Like but I got to respect your movie watching experience.
uh-huh.
But for me, um, I wrote down some notes. I said every aspect of this film was incredible for me. I think the acting was solid. I think the visuals were fantastic. Benny V at his best, really. I enjoy the sci-fi elements. I love a good sci-fi movie. And I really liked the inclusion of this alien coming to Earth and the threat they pose, or the supposed threat, and obviously the flashbacks and how they were intertwined. Often I really don't like flashbacks when they're used throughout a film to sort of tell an origin story.
Yep.
Um, like recently in Batman the Killing Joke, we get flashbacks of Joker's origin. I'd rather just get a Joker origin at the very start of the movie and then we go like 5 years or 15 years later or whatever,
Hmm.
I don't like how flashbacks are spaced throughout a film. However, this one flipped the book for me and I enjoyed it thoroughly because they gave us more information each time and we could start to piece it together. The movie's an hour and 55 minutes long, which comes in at one of Denny V's shortest films.
Yep.
And I think it's good that it was short. I feel like in the middle, I could sort of see it start to maybe drag at some stages, but it didn't really for me. I was still sort of invested. But
Hmm.
then at the same time, I have watched this movie before. I know that there's a big payoff coming. I know it's a good movie, so I'm going to stick around for it. But perhaps if I hadn't watched it before, I would have gotten a bit bored, maybe during the middle elements. But regardless, I think the runtime is very well chosen. You know, I don't want this movie to be 10 minutes longer, 10 minutes shorter.
Mm-hmm.
I think it doesn't overstay its welcome. I think the music is brilliant. It's very haunting, and it elevates what's on screen. I love the ending montage. Gives me a bit of, as I've said, a bit of Inception vibes. How they sort of, you know, they wrap up the story with a good emotional payoff. And this movie hit me harder in the feels than something like Inception.
Mm-hmm.
And while you were speaking, I wanted to check out some of my other reviews to see what I've given an A, what I've given an A plus, and I've given Inception an A.
Yep.
And I enjoyed this more than Inception. I think it's a better movie than Inception, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this film gives you an interesting message and an interesting sort of takeaway. And I like to think about in my brain, because the aliens are saying, we're going to give you this gift because you're going to need to help us in 3,000 years' time. I want to think about what the aliens will need help with in 3,000 years' time or whatever. So it's got elements that people will probably have theorized about. So I always love a bit of ambiguity. So I like that too. Look, it's nothing like we've ever seen before. I think you can't like sort of say that this is not a unique movie.
No, it's very original, yeah.
Yeah. So I always love to credit that as well. Look, Danny V does it again, mate. It might be his best movie, critically speaking. I'm going to give it an A plus.
We've got a 3 rank difference between our ratings here.
Bro, the Instagram followers are going to look at their feed and they're going to go, hang on a second.
They're going to see like gold and then like a red sort of D plus next to it.
They're going to think we're joking or something, like one of us has gone to the other end of the scale, like deliberately. But yeah, I mean, interesting. Look, I've thoroughly enjoyed chatting about it. And
no, this was very interesting.
I think at the end of the day, I think, you know, no matter how similar you think your sort of movie perspective is to another person, the fact that you can go into the same movie, one person can come out saying it's a masterpiece, and the other person coming out saying like I want to die, it's incredible. Like it's very interesting and keeps things interesting, doesn't it?
It's just such a weird sort of, you know, it's such a weird format to analyze, and you know, a lot of people say, how can you review art? In a way, I think probably we shouldn't be reviewing art, but it's fun to do it nevertheless. You know, it's so odd how, even though, you know, us of the same age, the same upbringing, the same likes, I mean, we like the same things, and we can just, one of us can not enjoy something and one of us can just absolutely love it. It just goes to show how like cinema just pleases different people. Like it's just different for everyone.
And then if you flip the script, right, and then if you flip the script on, and then thinking, imagine you're a producer of a movie, right, and you want to target our market, right? You want to make a movie that's going to appeal to both of us. Like, you never know if it's actually going to work because your core audience might just show up and think, oh, actually, no, I didn't like that. Even though the movie was made for me and it supposedly ticks all of the boxes that I'm supposed to like, it just didn't work. And that's just the business, mate.
That's the showbiz.
It doesn't excuse some, you know, some decisions that are made by the likes of Warner Bros. But yeah, regardless, look, this has been a great episode. I want to thank the listeners for listening.
It's a long one.
To follow us. Yeah, it was a long one. One of the longest ones. If we keep going for another 4 minutes, it might be the longest one. So I might try to wrap it up. If you would like to follow us on Instagram, you can do so at the Rewatch Pod. If you want to send us an email, you can do so by sending an email to the1rewatchpodcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to subscribe to the YouTube channel, just search the Rewatch on YouTube. We are approaching 100 subscribers, Jaden.
Yeah, what are we going to
We're
do?
almost there. What are we on? 90, 91 now? 92?
No, I think we're on like 95, 96.
Oh my goodness, really?
Yeah, we
It
jumped
changes
up.
every day.
It
Oh,
just
goodness
keeps
me.
going up.
We
95.
might have to. Yeah, oh, wow. We are getting very close. So if you're listening and you enjoyed the episode, click that subscribe button. You might be our 100th subscriber. Wouldn't that make you very special?
Yeah.
But yeah, so we might have to do something to celebrate. Might have to do a special kind of video. But yeah, so I might have to get thinking about that one because it seems like we're going to hit 100 subscribers pretty soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty crazy. How long we've been doing this for? Like, what, 6-7 months now?
Yeah, and it's already like taken well off. So thanks to everyone that's been listening.
Next episode, we might finally get around to The Empire Strikes Back.
Yes.
We might do something else.
Who knows?
If you want to find out, though, stay tuned to the Instagram page. But that'll be it for now. So thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
See ya.